I've actually been sitting on this footage for a while. I bought this thing over a year ago and just kind of got busy and failed to make the video. But anyway, I'm ready to talk about it now. And today I want to take a look at the PSP model E1000, aka the PSP Street. I was really excited to finally get my hands on one of these things because it was not released in the States. So I had to have this one shipped over, and it's in really good condition. So back in 2011, the PSP as a platform was really starting to wind down. Sony had already announced the PlayStation Vita, and they were really starting to shift focus over to the next generation of consoles. But the PSP still had a pretty strong presence in certain pockets around the world, places like Europe, the Middle East, and Latin America. And most of these regions are what the industry considers to be cost-sensitive markets. So the idea of selling a stripped-down version of the PSP at a considerably lower price in these markets just made a lot of sense for Sony. And that's exactly what they did with the PSP Street. They made sure that the bridge to entry was as easily accessible as it possibly could for everyone around the world. And I actually give Sony a lot of credit for that because the PlayStation brand as a whole isn't exactly known for its pocket-friendly business practices. But going back to the PSP Street, what exactly do I mean when I say a stripped-down version? For starters, aesthetically, they went back to the thicker size for this model. It's more akin to the PSP 1000 than it is any of the other models. It's a chonky boy. This move was actually strategic because not only did it serve its purpose of keeping costs down, it actually made the console more durable, which is excellent for younger audiences who have a tendency of roughing up their handhelds a lot more than their older counterparts. Next, the thing has absolutely no Wi-Fi, which means no multiplayer gaming. You can't play games online or through ad hoc, no access to the PlayStation Store. This is a physical media only device, and no web browsing, which was kind of a big deal for the time period. For a lot of us, this was our first experience having a handheld internet access point. The thing only had one speaker. It did not have the rich stereo sound quality that the other PSP models did. And finally, it had a considerably cheaper quality screen. The colors were less vibrant, the brightness was less radiant, and there was a much more noticeable amount of motion blur. And the viewing angles were just not as good if you tilt this thing in any other direction other than right in front of your face. Pointing out some other differences with this handheld is the memory stick goes in topside and is fully exposed. It's got nothing covering it. When accessing the UMD drive, the entire backside actually opens up, meaning there's no way to replace the battery, at least not without having to disassemble the entire handheld. Over on the bottom, the Street does have a 3.5mm headphone jack, but it is lacking that additional port that some of the other iterations of the handheld have, meaning this thing will not be able to connect to an external display, or you won't be able to connect any of those proprietary PSP headphones. The buttons feel virtually identical to the 1000 model, however the D-pad feels more like the one you would see on a PSP 2000. Which is a huge positive because that's my biggest issue with the PSP Fat or 1000 model is the D-pad kind of sucks. And another one of the biggest differences cosmetically is right beneath the screen right here, they went and abandoned the physical buttons. Instead, it's been replaced with this plastic strip that actually kind of resembles a capacitive touch strip, but that's not what it is. There's actually physical buttons underneath the plastic here. This strip is the reason why finding one of these in decent condition is becoming increasingly difficult. This strip can easily become worn out over time, or you'll start to see some small puncture marks from long fingernails. As visually appealing as it is, it's not as durable as having the physical buttons there. Its reception was pretty mixed. While some people praise Sony for making a more budget-conscious version of the handheld, others felt it was a far too stripped-down version, and that owners of the Street would really miss out on some of the key features that made the original handheld so great. And then you had a large group of people, myself included, that thought it was absolutely ridiculous that they would release a physical version only of the PSP just 2 years after they released a digital-only version. In 2009, they released the PSP Go, which had no UMD drive and relied solely on digital downloads. The Street was a complete 180 and gave zero access to the PlayStation Store or any digital libraries. Overall, at its core, it's still very much a PSP. And despite the corners that were cut, I really don't think it takes away from the overall PSP experience. But I do feel at this point in time, this thing is more of a collector's item than anything else. If you're looking for a PSP to actually play for the first time or relive some of your childhood memories, I would highly recommend trying to track down a PSP 3000 that's in good condition. To this day, that still remains my favorite version of this console. It has all of the charm and features of the 2000 model design, with the added vibrance of the vastly improved display. Now, I will say there are some games that actually relied on the PSP's motion blur of its original display to mask some of the roughness of the graphics. Playing games like that on a 3000, sometimes you will notice scan lines, and there are some people that just don't like that. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're looking to enjoy and collect for a PSP, the 3000 model is where it's at. Of course, a modded PSP Go with custom firmware installed is an elite experience in and of itself, but that's a whole different story. So I know what you're probably thinking at this point, Ness, with all of these shortcomings, why the hell would you go out of your way to buy one of these? For one, it's a model PSP that I do not have, and I consider myself a collector, so I need one of these in order to complete my collection. And secondly, surprisingly, this screen actually comes out better on camera than some of the other PSP models. I record most of my footage on a DSLR, and it just does not like the PSP 3000 or the PSP Go screen very much. I often find myself having to come up with a creative angle or to focus on something that's kind of farther away from the handheld and manipulating it so that it's still in the shot. Or other times I just say the hell with it and just record PSP footage using my phone. But with the 1000 model and now with the Street, it seems to pick it up just fine. I can actually point the camera directly at the handheld without any unusual scan lines or artifacts showing up on the footage. So I probably figured this would be the PSP that I use the most on screen going forward. The package that I bought actually came with a bunch of games, which is really cool because I don't have any UMDs from that part of the world, so I'm definitely happy to be adding this to my collection as well. It came with 7 games total, including Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Party Edition, which was exclusively released in PAL regions. A US version of the game was never made, and it definitely shows because I can't answer any of the damn questions that are related to UK pop culture. Now, I do plan on modding this console, so I don't really have any intentions on playing many physical games. But nonetheless, it's still really cool that I actually now have a physical copy of this one. The rest were various sports titles, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, and in my opinion, one of the more truly underrated PSP games, Fat Princess Fistful of Cake. I can tell the person who owned this PSP previously was a true man of culture. Unfortunately, the game didn't work. It just makes a weird grinding noise when you put it into the UMD drive. I don't think the disc itself is actually damaged, but I think the housing of the UMD is damaged. That'll be a nice little project to undertake at a later date to get this game back up and running. But like I previously stated, once I mod this PSP, I'm really not going to be playing too many physical games on it. But it's still nice to have. So the PSP Street, what did you guys think of it? Did some of you not even know this console existed? Did any of you get this version when it first came out? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I just want to give a big thank you. You guys are all kinds of awesome. If you thought the video was good, feel free to drop a like. And if you haven't done so already, consider giving me a sub. It really helps me out. Anyway, see you all soon.